Bueno, muy buenas tardes a todos. Creo que es buenas tardes
Good
en
afternoon. I
todos
think
los países
it's the
latinoamericanos
afternoon
a esta
in
hora
all of the Latin American
de las
countries. It's
28 partes
afternoon.
del mundo. Eh, Quiero partir con una breve introducción
I would like to begin with an
de la
introduction
organización de
of the
la que formo
organization
parte, la International Land
to which
Conservation Network.
the
Es una
International Land
iniciativa del
Conservation
Lincoln
Network.
Institute of
It's
Land
an
Policy
initiative
based in
from
Cambridge,
Lincoln
Massachusetts.
of Land Policy.
El ILCN es una red global dedicada a conectar
It's a global network
organizaciones y
that
personas de todo el
wishes
mundo
to connect
que están desarrollando acciones
organizations
voluntarias
and
de
people from
conservación de
all over the
tierras
world
en el sector privado
who
y
are
la sociedad civil.
moving ahead
El
with
ILCN
land
busca
conservations in the private
empoderar
sector.
a estas personas
And
y
we wish to
organizaciones,
empower these people
intercambiar
and different
experiencias y
organizations,
prácticas y
exchange
fortalecer el movimiento
experiences,
global de conservación,
and
organizado en cuatro
to
áreas de trabajo:
increase the
el
conservation
financiamiento para la
project
conservación,
worldwide, the
políticas
finance for
públicas y
conservation,
leyes,
public
organización y
policies,
gobernanza,
laws,
y manejo y
organizations,
custodia de tierras.
governance, and
Desde el
handling of
2020 se tomó la
lands.
decisión
Since
de
2020, we
fortalecer nuestra
made the
presencia
decision
regional
to
a través de
strengthen
la
our regional
designación de
presence
representantes regionales
through the
en los distintos
designation of
continentes.
different representatives in different
Iniciamos el proceso
continents.
de recomponer
We
esta red
began this
latinoamericana
process
y
to set
aprovechar
up this
el trabajo
Latin
que ya
America
se
network
había venido
and
desarrollando desde
try
hace un
to
tiempo. Así que
use
con
the
nos
work
hemos
that
sumado a
had
este
already
esfuerzo
been
de
done.
contribuir al
And
fortalecimiento
we
de
have
esta red. ¿Cuál es el objetivo
and
de
so we
este
have joined
seminario
in
que
this
nos convoca
effort
hoy
and
día?
set up this
Quiere
network.
ser el primero de
Why
una
are we
serie
gathered here
que
today?
iremos
This will be the
desarrollando
first of a series
próximamente, y
of
es conocer
meetings that we
la
will
disposición
have
de los
moving
miembros de
forward
esta
to
red
understand this
para
position for the
transitar
members
hacia
of
una
this
red
network to
más formal,
move ahead
más
to a
fuerte, más
more formal
extensa,
network,
que
a
contribuya a
stronger
fortalecer
network, a more
la
extensive one
conservación
that will
voluntaria de
contribute
tierras de la región
to
de una
the land
manera
conservation
más
effort
efectiva.
in the region in a more
Hoy día
effective manner.
vamos a tener un primer
Nowadays,
panel
we
que
will
va a dar a
have
conocer
the
el
first
resultado
panel, which
de
will
una encuesta
let us know
que
the result
realizamos
of
para
a
efecto de
survey
conocer la
that
disposición
we
de las
set up to
personas
try and understand
de
this
avanzar
position
y
of the
fortalecer esta
people
red y de
to move
comprometerse e
forward
involucrarse
and
con
to
una red
really get
latinoamericana.
involved with the Latin American
El,
network.
la presentación
The
va a estar
presentation
a cargo
will
de
be
Zach Hummel,
will
se
be
lo voy a presentar
under
más adelante,
Zachary
y va
Hummel.
a estar
I will present
facilitada por
him
Karina Pinar.
further along, and also Karina
Antes de ingresar a la
Pina will
presentación
also
y
help.
al panel, quiero
Before
dejar con
moving
ustedes
forward with the
a
presentation and the
Shani
panel,
Sonavalka.
I would
Shani
like to
es
leave with you
directora
Shandi
asociada de gestión
Navadka.
sostenible de tierras
She
y
is
recursos hídricos en el Lincoln
a
Institute of
director
Land
of
Policy en Boston,
this
Massachusetts.
effort in
Ella
Boston,
al mismo tiempo
Massachusetts. She
maneja
also
el programa de conservación de tierras
handles
del
the
ILCN,
land conservation
conectando
project,
organizaciones, redes y
DSL.
practicantes de la conservación de tierras privadas
She
en 6
connects
continentes.
different
Sandy,
workers.
por favor, tienes la palabra.
Sandy, you have the
Thank
floor.
you, Hernan, and apologies, everybody. I'll be speaking in English today, but I hope that most of you will understand. And Hernan gave a great introduction to the ILCN and the session today, but I want to just say good afternoon to everybody, good morning and good evening for those of you who may be joining from other regions and continents, and welcome all to this online session. I'm really excited about the conversation today. And it's wonderful to see so many colleagues from across Latin America, North America, and beyond. I'm seeing in the attendee list a lot of folks from Europe and Australia here today as well. So Hernan already introduced the ILCN, which, as many of you are aware, connects organizations and practitioners who are advancing private and civic land conservation around the globe. We really see ourselves as a network of networks, and we are collaborating with national and regional and local networks in Europe, Australia, and beyond in countries like Chile and Argentina to support knowledge exchange and technology transfer across sectors and across borders. And as a network, we really try to better understand the value proposition of networks, the role that they play in advancing the sharing of knowledge and the development and catalyzation of innovation. And so that's why over the past 2 years, we at the ILCN have been working closely with Hernan to support a network for voluntary land conservation in Latin America and to support and strengthen and build new relationships between practitioners who are advancing private and civil society-led land conservation efforts. And this year, with the support of the Nature Conservancy, we are continuing that work in collaboration with our project lead, Zach Hummel, who you'll meet later and who will be speaking at today's presentations. So we've already seen through the work that we've conducted over the last 2 years with Hernan and recently with Zach, a great response to this effort. And I'm very much looking forward to the conversation today. Begin to think about the role and value of a Latin American network and to potentially chart a path forward. And with that, I will turn it over to the director of the ILCN, Tim Levitt, to introduce himself.
Thank you, Chandni. There's very little I can add to this introduction except to say how excited we are to see the blossoming of this new version of the network in Latin America and the Caribbean. We know from firsthand experience how dynamic the land conservation sector is in the LAC countries, and I am very much looking forward to seeing the results of the survey and to seeing the results that you all bring on the ground in protecting land that is increasingly rare and tremendously valuable to the future of life on Earth. So thank you all so much for participating. We look forward to the session and future sessions. Hernan, I give the microphone back to you.
Gracias, gracias, Jim.
Thank you, James. We will move forward now with the presentation for the results for the survey. It's had tremendous success, great response. So Zach is a student, Zach Hummel is a student from the University of Montana. He has been investigating this in the Chilean Patagonia. He began a project in December to really fortify this network, and that has as an objective to understand the necessity of private land conservation in Central America, and to strengthen and to really increase that network for conservation, for land conservation. That first stage is a survey, which is what we will present today, and then the results. Let's hope we can see that soon. And so then in this way, we also will understand the perspectives that we have regarding the value of fortifying and extending that network of this type. So in the next minutes, we're thinking from now to 90 minutes, you will begin the presentation. That will be approximately 10, 12 minutes of presentation, and then we will have a panel with different participants, and that will be led by Karina Pinasco. So Zachary, you have the floor. Thank you, Hernan. I will share my window. Can you see my presentation? Can you see me? Yes.
Buenos días, todos y todas. Un saludo
desde
Missoula, Montana.
Good morning, everyone. Greetings from Missoula, Montana. My name is Zachary Hummel. I am the representative of this organization that is strengthening this project. In these last weeks, we have implemented a survey to try and understand the main challenges for our members, to explore challenges and benefits that the network could perhaps provide in this process. So in this process, we'll provide a summary of the survey, and based on this, we propose some questions that we can explore with our panelists. I will begin with an introduction of our of the
a
people that
todos
were
nuestros
surveyed.
miembros actuales
This was
que
distributed
vienen
to
de
all
estos
of our
15
current
países a
members.
través de Latinoamérica.
They are from these 15 countries
También
from Latin America.
representan una
They
de estas
also
organizaciones.
represent one of
En
these
total, hemos
organizations.
tenido unas
In
56
total,
respuestas.
we have 56
Realmente fue un
answers,
éxito y queremos
which was
agradecer
a
a
true
todos y
success.
todas
And
que
we
han
would like to
respondido,
thank
que
everyone who took this
contribuyeron
survey and
a
who
estos
contributed
resultados.
to these
Ahora,
results.
quiero tomar un momento para
Now,
destacar algunos logros de
I
la
would
red
also like
actual.
to emphasize some
Primero,
successes
nuestros
of the
miembros operan a
current
escalas distintas,
network.
de lo local a
Our
lo
members
internacional. Así que estas
operate in different
organizaciones
areas, locally,
comprenden de 1
regionally,
a
but
más de
these
2.000
organizations
miembros.
understand
Y si sumamos
or
a
really
todos
are
los miembros
conformed by
entre estas
almost 2,000
organizaciones,
members,
descubrimos
more
que
than
ya estamos
5,000 members.
conectados
So
con
if
más
we
de 5.000
see
personas dedicadas a la
what
conservación
these
voluntaria en
networks
Latinoamérica.
represent and how
Esto
many
es un
people
gran
are
logro.
represented, really we can see we are connected with
Además,
over
hemos
5,000 people. This
preguntado
is a
a los
great
encuestados
success.
si podrían señalar
And we've
ejemplos
also asked
en el que la
the
red
people
actual
that
hayan
we
resultado
have
útil. Salimos con estas categorías
provided that
principales.
survey to,
Estos éxitos son gracias a todo el trabajo que
and
los
we have
miembros
asked them,
existentes de la
and
red ya
we can
han
see the
hecho hasta la
results
fecha.
are a
Nuestra
success of
misión
the
es
exchange
de
of
seguir
experiences,
este esfuerzo,
informations,
seguir creciendo y
and
seguir
we want
fortaleciendo esta red
to
en
move
adelante
ahead
con el
with
fin
this
de
network,
apoyar a
moving
cada uno
forward
de sus
with wanting
iniciativas.
to support
Y qué
each one
alegría
of
tener
these
tanta gente
initiatives.
que están de acuerdo con ese
And it's
objetivo.
lovely to see how many people are
Afortunadamente,
involved with this objective.
no estamos solos en
Fortunately,
creer que una red más formal nos puede servir.
we can
Hemos pedido
understand
que los
that a more
encuestados
formal network
indiquen
will
su
be
nivel
beneficial to
de
us.
interés en
We
una red
have
más
asked them
formalizada.
to
Y esta
indicate
gráfica nos
their
muestra que
level
la
of
gran
interest.
mayoría,
And in this graph, we can see
51%,
that the
están muy
majority of them,
interesados. Y casi la
51%,
totalidad,
is very
una
interested. And almost the
97%,
total
está
of them,
interesado con distintos niveles de
97%,
involucramiento.
are interested in different levels of involvement.
Y no solo hay interés, sino
There
también
not only
capacidad.
is interest, but also
Esta
capacity.
pregunta de la encuesta
This
pidió a
question
los encuestados de
has
ponerse en
asked
alguna
them,
de estas categorías.
the different pollsters, to
Poca casa
be set
fácil
up in one of these
significa
categories.
que no pueden estar más comprometidos de lo que están
This
actualmente.
means that they can't
Quizás
be
ellos
more involved in what
serían
they currently
interesados en
are.
alguna plataforma en línea, pero ya
Maybe
están
they might be
ofreciendo todo
interested
lo que
in an
pueden.
online platform, but they're really giving
Capacidad
all they
limitada,
can.
en cambio,
This limited
ya
capacity
significa que pueden dar más.
means that they
Quizás
can give something
asistirían a
more.
eventos en
Maybe
línea
they will
y
assist
participarían con
with
motivación.
online projects and
Capacidad
participate with
adecuada
motivation.
está
And then we
representado
have
por
the
aquellos que
adequate
pueden no solo
capacity that
asistir,
is
sino
represented
también ser
with
participantes
people that
en
they can
eventos.
not only
Quizás
participate,
tienen
but
experiencia en un
also
tema o contexto
collaborate
específico
in
que
different
pueden apoyar
events.
de alguna
Maybe they
manera.
have a specific context
Además,
and they can provide us
están
support
interesados
in
en
a specific
asistir
area.
a un evento
And also
presencial.
they are
Y esto
interested
sería
in
clave para crecer las
participating
relaciones en la que se basa
physically, presentially
esta red.
in some
Y
on-site
finalmente tenemos la
event.
capacidad óptima, que significa que quieren
And
ser
then we
parte del
have
núcleo,
the
apoyar la
last
gestión,
capacity, which is a
planificar
great
talleres,
capacity, which means they want to
quizás
be part
participar
of
en
the nucleus
alianzas
of that red and
o
really
iniciativas
support
conjuntas
the
entre
direction
organizaciones
of the
y países.
project, plan different events, whether that be in
Quiero
person
mencionar
or in any
que cada
area.
uno de estos
I would also
grupos
like to mention
formarían
that
un
one of
parte
these
integral,
groups would be an
de la red
integral part
y ofrecían algo
of the part
distinto.
of the network,
Esto no
and
es
they
para
can
decir que
offer something else. This isn't to
uno está más
maybe say
valioso que otro.
that one
Es solo para
has more value
entender
than the
que
other,
esta capacidad
but it's
como
really
equipo.
just to understand our
Lo que
capacity
estos
as a
resultados
team.
nos indican
What
es
these
que los
results
encuestados
show
están
is that
interesados en
the
ofertas con un rango
surveyed
de compromiso,
people are
tan
interested
simple
in
como una
different
base de
offers
datos o
with
plataforma en línea
a
hasta un evento
commitment,
presencial.
whether that be
También
online
es
events
informe de los
or
próximos pasos,
even in person,
lo cual
and
sería
also
el
to
conformar
provide a
un
report
comité
for the next steps, which
ejecutivo,
might be to maybe
un
set up a
núcleo
committee, an
y también
executive
planificar un
committee,
evento
as part of a nucleus, maybe event plan in plan events in 2024 so we can meet in person. So obviously the question that comes about is, what can we do with this capacity? What does a more formal network mean? And that is what we would like to see with different areas, and that is what we wish to set up. And to see the role of the network, we can see we also need to look into the challenges for our network. And here we see we have asked the surveyed people to set up their main challenges. 1 would be the most important, 5 would be less important. On the right, we have an estimate. And what do we see here? In the average, we see that the financial aspect is the main challenge, followed by public policy. So that the network can be considered a success, they need to set up and deal with these challenges. Right now, I am leading also an investigation with public policy and the different challenges that we face. This will be ready in April 2024. And it can also let us have an idea of how we can face these challenges. Here we can see how this network can help to face these challenges. Here we have a list of different services of a network. We can see this list as possible tools that can propose different tools for their members. And we see that the surveyed people classify each service according to the relevance for their initiative. And here we see the average as well. 3 is the most relevant, 1 is less relevant. And so we see this here, and then we're going to try and understand each of them. We see on the right where it says media, that is average, and the ones that is most closest to 3, which is the most relevant. So the first challenge really I'd like to emphasize, look more into these 3 challenges. 2 of the main challenges have to do with finance and public policy. So really, we're not even surprised to see this above to see these on top of this graph of this board here. So we have that the first challenge is training on finance for voluntary conservation. If our panelists could also explore what it means, what that means, what training and finance means in each of their contexts. What does the training mean in, for example, Ecuador or Panama? And then if you see the other 3 that I have highlighted here, these other 3 services, what this means is what this is now. So we can share experiences, and we need to continue to plan events such as these. I propose that everyone that is present today, where we can see other events or different individuals that might be in this webinar, what other type of events we can also set up. We need to look into this. And briefly, I would also like to highlight this service, which is a support for the formalization and the registry of protected areas, private protected areas in each country. Almost 50% of these indicators have said that they would like to register these initiatives, but we need the support. So we need to see how the network can support them. And finally, although these services are near the end of the graph, they all have an average from 2 to 3, which is pretty high. This means that these services would also be useful for our members. So what have we discovered with this survey? Perhaps what's most important, the most important thing we've discovered is that there is interest and capacity to contribute to a more formal network. This is good because it means the results of these efforts in this stage, there is interest. And then also we see that the finance and public policy are the two main challenges that we face and that we will face. So the success of the network will depend on their capacity to support different initiatives to try and tackle these challenges. And finally, in the graph with the services, lets us know some ideas to where we can focus our resources. So it's not good for us to have all of that information without putting that into context. We need to put these findings and set them up according to each country. So I will leave you with these questions that have come about because of the different contribution for the surveyed people, and maybe our panelists are able to explore some of these today. And if not, we can always look into these again in the different seminars or meetings we may have. So Hernan, I will turn it over to you so that you make the other presentation. Thank you.
Hernán, ¿estás por ahí?
Creo que Hernán no está, así que
Hernan, are you there?
so if he's not there, I can introduce myself, no problem. How are you?
If not, I will present myself.
My friends, something
I
happened
hope
to
everyone
Hernán.
is doing well. Maybe something
Apparently,
happened to
he
Hernan. I
lost
think his connection
If you don't know me, my name is Karina
failed. For
Francisco.
those who don't know me, my name is
I'm a
Karina
member of
de
the
conservación voluntaria de este
Karina
aquí en
Penasco. I am part of this network for a while. I am part of the network for Peru. I am part of the network for the communal network in Peru, and it has several years. Nowadays, it has a total of 12 regions with over 180 initiatives in different areas, private, with families, universities, communities, concessions for conservations, different organizations, etc., which is come as a result of over 2,000 hectares conserved, set up as a conserved area. We have over 15 million soles per year set up for the protection of deforestation. So now this network has several years, and I have worked in this area and set up to really drive this forward in many areas, in different reports. In my country nowadays, I work in a main network to conserve the Amazonia, which set up different Amazonian countries.
como coordinadora general del Panamazónica de la Fundación Amazonía Sostenible en Brasil. Bueno, con esta introducción.
And in different conservation projects for Amazonia in Brazil as well. So now I will let you know about different panelists, and I will kind of try to make an introduction. We have Stefania Garcia. She's from Colombia. She's an administrator in different organizations.
especializa en implementación de
Having some audio issues.
información geográfica y gerencia de proyectos tecnológico y turístico,
Having some audio
apoyando
issues.
procesos de modelación e implementación de negocios sustentables. Desde hace 4 años está en la dirección.
4 years ago, she has had a team in this network, and she works with different organizations, with civil society as well, through different projects, conservation of OMED. And also we have Beto Mesquita. He's from Brazil, forestry engineer. He has over 30 years of experience. He also works with the civil society, holding a position in different public policies and different. He's also a co-founder of several books, and also he also works with different conservation. We also have Samuel Valdez. He is from Panama. He is licensed in biology from the University of Panama. He has a master's in marketing. He has over 20 years in the environment areas.
He works with monitoring of biodiversity, the effects on flora and fauna development of conservation plans. He has been an advisor for different organizations, has published different articles, and from 2019, he's the chair of the network of private networks in Panama. We also have Flavia Schulz from Argentina. She has a specialization in tourism and preservation of natural resources and has a wide experience in projects with the preservation of ecotourism, rural tourism, both in the private and public sectors, and looking for a responsible management of nature. He has been in interdisciplinary committees for private and public conservation, and she coordinates the Argentina network of natural reserves, and which recently has his Congress. I don't have a video now because of my internet problems, but I hope that you are listening very well to me. So let's start with this question, Estefania. So from Resnatur, you have worked for a long time in terms of voluntary preservation. So how do you see these challenges that SAC has identified within the context of the surveys? And how do you think you have been facing these challenges? And if you have difficulties, wider difficulties that could be addressed from this Latin American network? Thank you very much, Karina. Can you hear me well? Yes? Now? At least. I hope I don't have any signal problem. Well, first of all, I would like to greet you all. I'm very pleased to be here and see that not only in Colombia, but in the whole continent, in Latin America, there are a lot of people who have worked for a long time in this voluntary preservation area. So I'm honored to share this space with you. And from the network and as a personal, as a person, Stefania, I'm willing to collaborate with the network for anything you need. Thank you very much, Karina, for that introduction. And SAG, your presentation was wonderful, and I'm really thrilled to know about all these results and also the potential that this Latin American network has. Resnatur, we have worked this year, we have been working for 30 years now, and this network has different settlements or areas in Colombia. I would like to honor today, especially Juan Pablo Ruiz, who is one of the most important ambientalist or environmentalist in this country, and he died. He passed last week. Unfortunately, he was one of the co-founder of Resnatur and other institutions. As an economist, he always called the attention on how should be private conservation in Colombia, or how this conservation should have these two poles of conservation and production, and how this productive element could contribute to the sustainment of conservation at the local level. So this issue, at least on the first issue, which is, well, this first challenge, which is financing and public policy, we can, from the perspective of Resnatur, we are addressing this challenge with two perspectives. First, at the local level, how to strengthen the research to build capacities, to build these technical and administrative capacities, allowing people to strengthen their business models and consequently have income in their family economy, right? And also contribute at the same time with conservation. And also how these economic incentives can be provided at the local level. And this is also linked to an issue of public policy. Well, I will stop here. That's all. Thank you very much. Thank you, Stefania. Beto, we know that the biggest challenge or the biggest objective we have with regards to private or voluntary reserve for conservation is sustainability, financial sustainability. So in the network in Brazil, how are you addressing these processes about financial sustainability? And tell me if there are something that are not settled and that the network could contribute to settle. Thank you, Karina. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Congratulations to Hernan, to the entire team, to for this moment, to make possible this moment. I'm very pleased to be back with this idea that we can continue or maintain the construction of this network, building up these opportunities, these cooperation opportunities in Latin America. And so as for private voluntary conservation, this issue has been the more and more relevant. And I think that it's important that not only the experts, but also the landlords, the people who are there in the forest, in the landscapes, taking care of the nature by themselves, can also be the protagonists of this process. So the financing for voluntary conservation. In the case of Brazil, we have some challenges. Well, some of them are more relevant than others. To give you a little bit of context about the size of this network, in Brazil, we have the RPPN, which are the private reserves of natural heritage, formal and protected areas, legally recognized and in the system of protected areas of the country. This legal figure is a protected area that we call limited or restricted protection. For example, a biological reserve. So in this area, you cannot have any kind of exploitation or extraction of natural resources. So we cannot use directly the natural resources. However, it is important to have tourism, research, and other activities that can effectively create resources for these reserves, but this is very restricted. Today, we have 1,853 RPPRs in all the country, and together they covered 830,000 hectares. And as for the financing, it is an important topic that is always in the priorities of the regional association, and therefore in the national interest and in the interest of the experts, the entire expert network. But there is a challenge. We have tried to look for opportunities for financing, for example, linked to climate change or climate financing. But topic, this issue of carbon credit has created a lot of interest, has called a lot of attention and curiosity. However, because of the specific conditions of the RPPRs and because the eligibility issues of the carbon market, the RPPNs don't have a great opportunity, at least with the reserve that already exists. That's why the approach at this moment from some companies that are developing projects is approaching not only to think about the credit carbons in the formal concept, but also considering the contribution of all these areas can have not only for the storage of carbon stocks, but also for climate resilience in cities, in agriculture areas. And these areas are the only areas protected in a strategic basin, water basin, for example, or nearby a water plant. So we're trying to locate or transform this reserve in opportunities of climate action beyond and including the carbon market. I think this is important, and we could have some information or contribute with some information. And lastly, I would like to speak about a challenge that is now in the RPPRs in Brazil, and that I think that all the stakeholders are involved. Most of people who administer a private reserve don't have the training and the specific expertise for example, developing projects, do the fundraising or be connected with the opportunities. So networks like this one we are conceiving, organizations supporting those networks are key, are fundamental, are capital to be able to leverage opportunities and support the landlords. From my perspective, I don't think it is possible to do, and I don't like this term, the training of people, for them to, become project developers or fundraisers. I think that the most efficient way and that will bring more effective results in the short term will be to build opportunities in supporting networks, to offer them these opportunities to accede to resources, know where the funds are, know how to build the proposals and raise or collect the proposals, and not as individual projects, but projects that can contribute with resources and benefits to networks within the reserves. I think those are key issues, and the opportunity with this network had a lot to do with the opportunities to face this kind of actions. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Beto. After what we listened from Stefania, that you are supporting those people, the members of the networks like Natur, to work with biobusiness, or what we call bioeconomy, which is economic projects to administer or to manage resources in a sustainable way for them to have financial sustainability. This opens a wider perspective to work with projects focused on climate financing, and that is why we need this network. And this is what we have been doing from Peru with the network Amazonia, because we have understood that the carbon market is very complex for small areas. And because of the cost of transactions, we are working with different projects, blocks of projects in different areas that belong to the network. And in the next, let's see, month, we will have news about the feasibility of this project that is getting together, if I'm not mistaken, more than 20 conservation concessions. That is also a figure of voluntary conservation in Peru. There are other mechanisms, for example, services like water and biodiversity. Samuel, and from Panama, how are you addressing this issue of the financial sustainability for the voluntary conservation area that are part of the network? Good afternoon. for everyone. Well, we share with the rest of Latin America the same problems, a lack of sustainability, economic sustainability and financing. So this initiative, everyone is trying to keep their operations individually as they can. It is true that some of them not even accede to it because they are in very far places. They don't have the adequate infrastructure to develop these biocommerce or biotourism activities, so they are outside the opportunities. So something we have been working with, we have been fostering with ideas is developing projects that I think that have worked very well in different parts of Latin America. I think that in Ecuador, there's one of the example, the most representative examples, but also Costa Rica, they have payment for environmental services. And I think that we could also look at those mechanisms, financing mechanisms that are beyond the carbon market, and that is important, but that also, the forest is more than the carbon it fixes, and the ecosystem services created by our forest, by the water, by the pollen, the insects, the meat for human consumption. There is a huge series of benefits coming from these voluntary conservation initiatives, and we should think beyond that. And one of these opportunities is the biodiversity banking, which is the biodiversity banking mechanism, economic transaction mechanism between those who create a passive, environmental passive, and those who are creating assets, biodiversity assets, through restoration or conservation. In Panama, we have several examples of initiatives for private national reserve that started with degraded lands. There weren't any forests, and there was a restoration process that created assets, biodiversity assets that could be operated with those that have assets or liabilities of biodiversity. So in Panama, we haven't been able to consolidate any of these projects because we have a big challenge ahead, which is the acknowledgement public policy. I'm sure that we will address this later, but since there isn't a formal registry, and since the area doesn't have a support by the state through an instrument, a regulation, or an official acknowledgement by the state, it is very difficult to then start discussing or debating these topics with the private sector or international organizations. Thank you very much, Samuel. Flavia, your turn, your situation. I think it's a little bit difficult in Argentina. So let us know about the challenges back there and how is the network working or operating in Argentina, and what are the expectations from Argentina about the support of private parties with regards to sustainability. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, in Argentina, the situation is similar to what Samuel mentioned in Panama or Beto in Brazil, but the fact is that in Argentina, governance depends on the provinces. So let's say that the financing is different, the legislation is different. Our network in Argentina started with a project, the Fund of the Americas, in 2013, and in 2014, we, let's say, formalized it with barely 50 reserves. Today, we have more than 105 within our network, more than 170,000 hectares protected, and we became a civil society later on. And this is the hope that we have, the hope that it can facilitate the access to financing at the national and international level. We have been working on this with the allied partners. Our network is made by university organizations, civil organizations, and university with programs regarding voluntary conservation, where they offer advice for different landlords. So the training is provided through the organizations, the technicians at the universities and the organizations. Recently, we published a study, a project that we worked with the Ministry of the Environment in our country. It was developed in 2019, 2020, with the results, it's an update, a characterization of the private conservation areas, more than 300 voluntary initiatives all around the country. There are only 15 provinces legally recognized for protected areas, and not all of them include the figure of the private or voluntary conservation. So we don't have mechanisms at the national level in place. So this is, let's say, sui generis because each landlord works as they can. So the fact that we can come together, join our efforts, it's very positive because we are looking for having more effectiveness in the long term. We have a wide range of profiles, of landlord profiles, from very small ones to micro companies or micro enterprises, families, universities. They also are the owners of research. So there are a huge diversity in surfaces too, and that includes the differences in the governance too. This is very complex, or makes very complex the operation of the areas, but each province is empowered and has resources. And this may be also a restriction for financing. There are some provinces with the law of that operate very well the law of forests and it contributes a lot with the conservation of forests, and other provinces don't. And this creates a difference and becomes a problem too. So let's say that the public policy is not supporting us very much. That will be pretty much the idea, but we want to be in touch, in permanent contact with the different areas, private, public, and try to improve this and continue going on. Thank you very much, Claudia. One of the things that Zach mentioned in his fantastic presentation to present the results of the survey is that between the things that we have accomplished, we have political influence, but we have a lot of challenges there too. Each one of them will depend on the reality and the context, but there are common features. One of them, and I've heard this, is incentives, right? Positive incentives for voluntary conservation. We have to be realistic in a context like the one we have right now. I mean, the climate crisis, and I heard a crisis, a climate tragedy. We have to stop the denial and start accepting what we are living now. We are democratizing conservation, right? We are getting what the state hasn't accomplished, hasn't achieved, which is restoring. Samuel mentioned that they have restored landscapes, they have recovered systemic services. We are speaking about areas where the deforestation has been reduced or stopped. So this is savings for the state, right? We should find a way that and we in Peru, we always clarify that we are public officers, but we don't earn any salary, but we need minimal conditions to continue doing our job. And this is linked to the reflection. What would be the political incidents we could have in Latin America which specific topics, depending on the reality of this country, we could work with together to achieve this objective of being efficient in our administration. I thought, for example, in the visibilization, the value of the job we do and the figure, I know that this couldn't work for Brazil because you are already within the accomplishment of the 30 by 30 targets and the OECMs, which is a great opportunity for visualization. But the fact that these OECMs come with the report and they contribute effectively to the national targets if we could include incentives. And we are working, for example, in a proposal of a regulation. It was approved in the first voting in the country, in the Congress, healthy environment for taxes. So it involves all the mechanisms of voluntary conservation and against taxes, and we are waiting for it to be approved. Another topic that is important, I don't know the situation in other countries, in Peru is critical, is terrible. The top is the issue of life preservation, our life. We are in the first line. Yesterday, we knew that one of the environmental advocates in Peru was murdered, and he's not the only one. So which are the mechanisms that we could put in place to safeguard the life of people, and also these positive incentives allowing us to work in a better way? Please, in the same order. So Estefania, Beto, Samuel, and Flavia. Thank you very much, Karina. I'm very surprised to see the difference in the contexts that we have in the different countries. In Colombia, we have this acknowledgement, the natural reserves of the social society is the only way of private governance that is acknowledged in the system, and they are registered and a decree by the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development. However, not all these reserves have their requirements covered. There is one incidence or bottleneck, and it's the legality about land ownership in Colombia. Informality in this is very high and very important, and this doesn't allow people, even if they have a long time, let's say, governing their lands, can show that they are the real owners of the land. So this is a limitation. There is another thing. In many cases, people are not interested in getting involved in this national system. And that is why we have included the other reserves are included in other local networks, articulating networks, or a national network as Natur, and the OECMs can help us to visibilize these initiatives. When there is a reserve that is registered, and we have cases, however, where the single membership to Resnatur that certifies that in this land there is conservation activities at the local level, at the municipal level, we can obtain benefits. In general, in Colombia, because of the law, the civil society reserves are entitled to receive environmental compensations. That means that when a company is having a production activity or is, let's say, developing an infrastructure project, the law requires that they have to compensate through this civil society reserve discount in taxes, cadastral taxes that exists in Colombia already. However, this is a process that has to be introduced at the local level with or before the municipal councils, and there is an important thing here. Not all the municipalities have the resources because they cannot, they are small and they depend and they cannot provide these resources. And this is a difficulty because it's a local level management. Other problems can include beneficiaries from other programs when they can show that the land is appropriate and mm, meets all the requirements to have a species liberation. And there is another one that is very important at the political level, is that they can become part of what we call the environmental determinations. These are part of this environmental regulation of the territory. So each municipality needs to have an environmental planning plan to determine the urban or the rural areas, areas for agroecological growing, and the civil societies are acknowledged as environmental determinants or parts in the plans, in the national plans. Sometimes these local organizations are the ones that can show or disseminate these projects. We are told about it, and this is important for the reserve to become visible and accede to these initiatives. First of all, we have to have these different contexts that exist in every country, but how this network can handle good databases with minimum information from each reserve and become hubs, consultation hubs for the organizations and other groups, and provide timely information about the location of the reserve, what they do, and they can become visible.
Independently from the level of recognition or not there might be in each country, I think that being part of a network, whether that be local or national, and with the potential that this Latin American network has, we can really make this stronger that can make this organization stronger to try and have the support of a network. But if that network has something that has a national organization and that also is part of a bigger network, that can obviously provide excellent support. There's also something interesting here, as what you said in Colombia. The conservation areas are part of a formal big network of conservation. But within that framework, there is something previous to that that's 10 years ago in 1990. And then this network for conservation is of the year 2000. So what we had previously that was already established, really we have the same type of guidelines, requisites. We also have land owning policies. Lands are determined, and there are always different types of management and be in the national registry. That's created in perpetuity. Once created, you could sell it, you can inherit it, but you can't change what that has been defined as. There is no limit to size either in values or in any type of area. You might have 10% of the building or just 10%. You can have 1 hectare or 100 hectares. The owner proposes it, and then the government looks into it, and then they consider if yes, they approve it or not, or maybe there will be some modifications done. But In a more organized matter, the Confederation is now working with a project with to pass a law so that we may also have. We will remain within the national network, but so that we can also have our own laws. And that is something that is being proposed and negotiated with Congress at the moment. And there are some aspects that are very important. One is to correct what we call the legislative anomaly. Brazil is split up into two categories, one that is integral protection and the other one is sustainable use. Since 1990, the ones that have been protected land, that still remains. And then that is also what's happening in the national system. But due to some other issues that I won't go into, some have been determined as for sustainable use, but it's not sustainable use. So really, that's what we're looking into. How can we correct that? And one that Stefania indicated, which is a possibility to access funds for conservation protection, whether that be a road, a dam, a railway, if that is within the sustainable use group, then if they are within that, then they have that right. And then we have integral protection, whether that be directly or indirectly, it may affect it, but they have the right to access those resources. So that's something that's very important. But now, from 2021, Brazil approved the national policy for payment of environmental services. And the law is there. There may not be the guidelines, regulations, or funds specifically for that, but the law is there and it explicitly mentions within the group, within a priority area, to access those funds for environmental services. And so what does the national policy do? Different schemes, national, local, regional. We have a sort of kind of like a guide. So we say RPP is part of the protection and so forth. But if there is something, that's something we need to understand, that RPP is within those protected guidelines. So what we're handling today is that we have new laws that can provide better benefits, more opportunities, even financially, and basically for support, for control, for fire control, fiscalization, inspection, also for different insurances, for home insurances, for these areas. So that is where we are at as in regards to political policies. And we are trying to move forward with some adjustments and something specific that I believe is very specific, and it's great to share and try and think how we can exchange ideas and what we can do as other countries are. Samuel? Well, really, I am really following what they are saying, neighboring countries, but many times the motivation for a national reserve isn't enough. Sometimes you can just do it because it makes you feel well, but there isn't maybe a benefit. So maybe I might not even say anything. I'll just take note of the different benefits and impulses. Yes, well, the potential of benefits. Yes, that's right, the potential of benefit. And we can see that that is the benefit of these types of organization, to really just look at what our neighboring countries are doing, what worked, what didn't work. And in Panama, this is my last period as a president in Panama. I've been president for 4 years and previously as a vice president. I obviously hope to continue active, and I will definitely set up contacts to see what an incentive might look like. Yes, thank you, Samuel. What you are mentioning, it's very important as to what we're trying to look into. Right, but what can we do as a network? As a network within Latin America and the Caribbean, how can that help us better these mechanisms and the different work in our areas? What can you say about this? Okay, well, I was also listening attentively in the second round of questions, and you indicated the different agreement for Escazú. And even if we are kind of on the lookout to see, this is something that is being divulged in the universities, in the academia, and all those challenges and things we need to really create a conscience, and all of those people that work in conservation, those who really put in all their body and soul every day in this. And one of the ways that this network works is through these regional nodes. We now have some new ones. Some work through different provinces. The land holding and the governance in our country, where the funds belongs to different areas of the government as in different provinces. And now we are also in a change of government in regional, but also in national as well. And every day we need to present ourselves with the authorities to really manage this with different criteria, and for them to know our faces and really just take hold of those spaces that are necessary, and to work with everything that has to do with control and fiscalization. That is something that's also missing in the different areas. That's something that many landowners, because not all of the provinces have the forest guards, for example. Every now and then there are new careers regarding that, but we are still there. We still have a long way to go. So really, this is an area where there's so much to do, and with each in each area. And when the government changes every 4 years, we need to begin again, sometimes from zero, and try and open doors and just try and be present, and try and be there. So really, that's something that's kind of hands-on work. That's something that's a characteristic of ours, but in unity there is strength. So that's something that we need to really look into, because that happens around us. Yes, that's something that's very characteristic of us all, that spirit to move on, even in that very difficult context that we're living in. Now I would like to move ahead to what we're expecting with this network within the context of these surveys. We also see there's a lot of interest to formalize this network, this Latin American network, and within the Caribbean with voluntary contributions. So what do we expect specifically from this network? How can we make this a reality for these expectations to come about, to really provide some results? Stefania? Okay, well, I believe that for a process that is kind of an idea still, but we want to really formalize, we need to understand what do we have and what do we need to contribute with to really make this happen. in my own experience, I think this webinar is amazing because there's a lot of experiences that are very valuable for different organizations. What has worked, what hasn't worked, and what do we do? What can we do as a network so that we can afterwards see how we can plan this and try to really coincide and agree with the different steps and make up a portfolio for those strengths that each one of these members of the network has in the Latin America network. So really, more than expectations, we need to look at what we can contribute with to this organization and really strengthen this network. Okay, so from your experience, what can we do? So, for example, Resnatur has different members, professional members. Something that happens in a lot of networks is that not only people that work in conservation share they are professionals in the environmental areas, but sometimes doctors, lawyers, engineers, all types of people that can decide in a voluntary manner to contribute somehow. So maybe set up some nodes in different interest groups. For example, that's how the red is working right now, actually, with those nodes, these groups that maybe we need to resolve some sort of judicial areas with the legislation in each country, how we can organize within each country, or people that maybe are experts in protection or governance, and really just look into how each country handles protected areas. Colombia, for example, right now is migrating to an area, to a different type of governance. Experts, for example, biologists. For example, we also have here that concept of that different characterization and really get to know what we have to try and use that for conservation. What do we have in our territory? Maybe different themes that can contribute to the network. And also consolidate that service portfolio. That's also key. But a lot, even beyond that, is how we can make up a plan, what different stages this network will have. I think there's a lot of work done already with that. And how can we set up a different a work plan and how we can move forward? Maybe that's better to really have something within your reach instead of making up a huge plan that we know it's going to be hard to get there. So sometimes to have reachable goals, that's important. So as I said, really, it's an honor to be here in this process. I've been with this for 4 years, and really the issue with conservation is fascinating. People will get hooked. There are many transversal subjects, environmental training, trying to create conscience in the public, many projects as those who will inherit the planet has been something really big in Latin America, and that's been championed by this network at a regional level. So there are many areas that are transversal, but this is something that really we need to move forward day by day. So how can we maybe move forward with this at a different scale? So Stefania, what you're saying really is how we can really organize what we need to do, governance. There are many interested people, and I think that's great. That really does happen when in our country. And Beto, I would like to say, I know maybe this is very ambitious, and sometimes we really need to take a step back. As Stefania says, maybe we need to really look into this more. But what really is that expectation? We've been with this for a long time already, and really we're kind of talking about this again as a really great dream that we might have. Maybe, we're the oldest here, but so really again, I would like you to say, to tell us again, how can we reach this expectation, these different little goals, these different little stages? Beto, with your experience, you've been working this for so long. What could you say? The advantage of being here for a while is that sometimes we know what hasn't worked, and so we don't go there, and sometimes we'll take a shortcut. But yes, I believe that the ideas and the way that Stefania proposes this, I find this very correct. And I would like to mainly, Karina, take a little bit of time here and say how much or what I think we shouldn't do to help us formalize this, because in Peru, we can see that we have fallen into a trap of trying to formalize a network in Latin America institutionally. And I believe that what's most relevant, what's most cool, what we really have to try to do and rebuild is the work with network, the cooperation within the network. And so that we can really recognize and reestablish effectiveness and legitimacy of the network. Those are the two main issues for me. That expectation that, yes, that people will recognize this and give value to that, but try to really be connected with that with that network, within a country, within a continent, within a planet. And with those different nucleus, for example, I was in a group today trying to remember what we did in 2005, the finance aspect, governance, policy.
So I think that we do have to invest our energy, our passion, and our efforts to build up this network, but avoiding institutionalizing or formalizing the network. We don't need that. It is not necessary, and we're gonna get in trouble as we did years before. So let's continue with this idea. And yes, let's start by, the beginning, first small steps. I think it is fantastic that we have the big challenges and the big issues identified, but step by step, let's advance step. Let's start with this or the other, one by one, and let's see how we advance. And step by step, we can move forward. But the idea of being together, it's the most important value that we should keep working in a network, in hubs, as a region, as a country, and as a continent. Thank you very much, Beto. Samuel? Well, I'm a little bit reluctant with this. I learned a lot by Alfonso Jaén, and I greet him. And I've learned from him this attempt to formalize these networks, and we have learned that it is very complicated. It creates misunderstandings and to create things that haven't worked. I have been witnessed. When I entered the network, there was before an attempt, another initiative that didn't consolidate and didn't get legitimate. But I think that the legal paperwork and the legal requirements beyond that, we should have an organic initiative that is acknowledge, that is comprehensive, and that even if it needs to be formal because we need a central organization, there's a governance system, that's it, a governance that not necessarily doesn't necessarily imply a lawyer, paying a lawyer to be registered before a ministry or as a legally instituted organization. I think it's more organic, and I think that it should get a representative mass of people that gives us the legitimacy, not through a paper or a resolution, but because the members of that organization are so many and so solid that they provide the organization an implicit respect that maybe we won't have through the formalization or the legal procedure. So we have to get together with through working meetings, establish committees, establishing clear objectives, clear targets, having a short-term schedule or planning, and working hard, because sometimes we have these big groups and then after that we have 5, 6 people working, actually working, and it is important to have this effective integration, involvement, and participation of other members through the working groups, the committees that they are engaged. And I think that it is very important to have a common objective for everyone, and then we will have the rest. After that, we will have the acknowledged the formalization and the participation of the political participation. I have thought, for example, in the long run, when we are constituted, we can have an incidence on the Central American system, including countries like Dominica or Dominican Republic. We can be part of that, of the Environment Commission. And there will be other integration platforms in South America. But we won't be able to do that if if we're not able to organize ourselves, create this group, and have clear objectives. Thank you very much, Samuel. I totally agree with you in that, because sometimes legal issues make more difficult the procedures, particularly because of the nature of people who work in voluntary conservation. We need more this legitimacy and effectiveness in, in doing, in actions and in being than other things. And as an experience in Peru, and Beto talked about this. In Peru, we thought about formalizing it. It was very complex, and the network working now, it's legitimate. It's acknowledged at the national level, even if it is not formally recognized. It has worked with all the ministries and national governments in a very efficient way. But we went through all this maturity process to understand that not necessarily a document or a formal process will give us the formality or the value. Flavia, is Flavia here? No, she left. Well, I think she left. Well, I would like, I see that we have a lot of attendees, and I don't know if there is someone who wants to speak, participate. You could raise your hand and participate. Many of them have posed questions, and we thank you for that active participation. But additional to what we talked about, there are other interesting things that we could discuss. First, governance. That's a key element. Formalization could include this internal organization issue. How can we start working and establish priority in each country? I see several topics there, or several issues there. One of them is the way we can position ourselves in our countries. I think that as a blog, we can do it as per the contribution to the compliance of international targets, how our work has an important contribution in the compliance of the country targets in each one of our countries. Another issue is how this acknowledgement can leverage different forms of financing, either in different actions within the context of biodiversity conservation and climate change, climate actions, climate financing, and that will be very important if we're there, if we are positioned, and that's the importance of the OECMs that are not in the national system. So being positioned, being spotted is very important in order to measure these contributions. If we're not visible, that's not possible. And I think that that's one of the strengths of the network, that we can become visible. You, Zach, mentioned that in the survey, some 5,000 people participated, but in the network in Amazonia, in Peru, there are more than 20,000 people participating in conservation. So imagine the seas, if we add everything up, there are families, universities, producer organizations, native, local and indigenous communities. So there are different types of organizations that are part of these conservation mechanisms. Another issue that I think is fundamental and that we can do is finding the way of supporting all these projects about regulation proposals that are being pushed or boosted in Brazil. How can we, from the network, support the country, statements, everything, and what Colombia mentioned too about land ownership in Peru. There are several initiatives at the effort by Argentina, by Panama, to boost and to implement these proposals, regulation proposals that are being developed in our countries. Lastly, and I think that's something that has been working very well and that we could consider how to boost, is the experience exchange and solution exchange. People who work in conservation know how to do things well, and it's because we love them. We love to do that. We don't have resources, but we do them very well because we do them with love. So it is important to continue sharing these experiences, but also trying to make them visible. I'm going to analyze how in our network could open a space for voluntary conservation and work. And James, I will give you the floor in a minute. James, please.
Thank you. Okay. I just want to say that we have reached our 90 minutes and that this has been a very productive and exciting webinar. I simply want to say that you are all participating in a global effort. You're all part of what we're doing in the ILCN, which is to try to bring practitioners together not only across Latin America and the Caribbean, but in North America, in Europe, in Africa, in Asia, and in Australia and New Zealand, and so on. So I welcome all the enthusiasm. I welcome all the good thought. We are an informal organization. You're members because you participate, and we have reach all over the world. So I'm going to ask, only because of the time limitation, that we close out the discussion today, and that Zach and Hernan especially, and Katrina, it's Karina. I think you're obviously very involved as well as is everybody else. Continue with this discussion and figure out how, as a region, this group can move forward. But it's evident that the passion and the participation is present. It's obvious that we've reached out to people who are the right people to have involved, who care deeply about the future of land conservation in South America and across the world. And I just want to thank you for all of that participation and all of the intellectual resources that you brought to this discussion. I'm going to turn it over to Hernan to close out the discussion and say that this is simply a beginning of a much longer and very productive enterprise. Hernan, you're muted.
Muchas gracias, Jim.
Thank you very much, James. I'm so sorry if at any point my connection was interrupted for a couple of minutes, so I didn't have the chance to introduce Karina, but since Karina is a leader, a conservation leader in Latin America, well, she simply doesn't need any presentation, any introduction, right?
Right.
So thank you, Karina, for your participation, your facilitation of this conversation. So productive, so efficient. I have a lot of ideas in my notebook, and I think that the most important thing is the interest, the strength, that we have, the drive that we have after this survey to continue working with these issues of financing strategies, the legal framework, the economic incentives. Sorry, there are audio issues. So, well, these issues were addressed to cooperation in general. Strengthening this structure will allow us to accede to other financial mechanisms and have an incidence on public policy too. I'm sorry. There are audio problems, connection problems. So these people who participated in the survey that they're interested to work, engage, to get engaged. So we have to bring them in a committee, for example, and prepare a sort of a plan, a sort of a strategy, any document that will allow us to face future actions. And undoubtedly, there is this issue and the need to meet again face to face in some point in Latin America, all the members. So, of course, I know there will be other webinars ahead where we will have the chance to share myself, Zach, everyone, and we will have the chance to work to move forward the construction of this network. Today, we had nearly 80 participants and nearly 80 attendees. And I want to thank again Karina and Estefania, Samuel, Flavia too, and Beto for their participation in this panel today. So I don't know if Karina has any other thing to say before we finish. No, I think that you said everything. Thank you very much to all of you. We have a lot of things to talk about. So this is going to be the first of, I'm sure, many webinars. We're going to have big events. We just have to plan our Congress in 2024. And I propose a hybrid modality to have the greatest level of participation, and we have to take advantage of technology. Thank you very much again. Thank you very much.